Welcome back to Lifting Leaders podcast. We are going to continue last week's episode with Dr. Pam McLean and Michael Hudson on coaching for a better world. And we're going to jump right in to the second half of that discussion. We hope you enjoy it.
So, Michael, what are a few practical steps that leaders can take for themselves and their teams to move into a more developmental leadership model? And then, Pam, would you please add to that?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Thank you.
Practical steps. We have a lot of resources to help with this, I just will say. Mm-hmm. And so, give me a call. I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think to experiment on one's own, there's a ton of stuff that you can do. And so, I think the first thing that I would think about is Pam mentioned awareness is self-correct. Start noticing all the times that you're giving advice. Keep a journal. Nice. Write it down at the end of every day. How many times did you give it? Did someone ask you for help or say they needed help with something? And how many times did you give advice? You could keep track of those things. How well did that work over time, right? There's all sorts of research you could do on your current approach. And I think we just don't look at that critically very often. And I think if we did, we would find, wow, I gave advice a lot, and usually it didn't stick. Maybe in the moment, that person said, great, that was so useful, thank you. But it usually doesn't work. Our advice is not as good as we think it is. And so I think auditing that habit, right? And then tinkering around, it's quite hard, but tinkering around with not coaching, because that's a bit intimidating, I think, and probably definitely requires some training, but tinkering around with inquiry. So if you can notice that urge to give advice, just ask a question. It doesn't really matter exactly what question you go with. Just using inquiry opens the door to a developmental interaction. So that would be my encouragement to really anybody. You don't need to go to a training program to go try what I just described.
Right. Yeah.
Start trying it. And I think that you would see a difference in your work.
Yeah, I would just add to that the wonderful exercise that Edgar Schein offered up, and I think in Humble Inquiry goes, every leader now and then should do an ask versus tell audit. At least every 6 weeks. 6 months. Take a week and just audit yourself. How often are you telling? How often are you asking? And so some of what Michael is really talking about is observe yourself.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Really take the time to get to know how you are showing up. And the other one I would add is how you demonstrate that you see another human being, that you hear another human being. It's probably never been more important than it is today. How are we doing that? How are we as leaders doing that? How are we experienced doing by others when we do that or don't do that? And when we don't send the message, I see you. I hear what's important to you. What happens? What is the price that we pay for that?
It just reminds me that I was recently reading some research on change in organizations, and the research was basically showing, even when we introduce a positive change, something that objectively looks positive, it helps people in some way, people often react with negative feelings towards that change.
Yeah.
Any change, even a positive change, mm-hmm. people will feel negative. And so, Pam, what you're saying is learning to value the relationship as much as the technical strategy, the choice, the change, but learning to understand that the relationship is just as important as that thing. And if you overlook that, then, we're going to get tripped up or slowed down or things are going to get messy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's even more important than the technical side of it. Yeah. It's that heart connection you need to have, or at least that's, for me it is. I'm a person who lives a little more on the empathic side of the world, and so if I don't have the heart connection, I have a hard time buying into whatever you're going to tell me needs to be done in a change, So.
Yep, absolutely.
I think, Michael, what you said there was really important, and I've seen this show up in leaders a lot, is they work really hard. They do have heart for their teams, and they finally roll out what they think everybody wants, and and it is a positive thing for people, and then they get that negative feedback, right? Because it is a change. And I think I see them sort of like shrink back and say, basically like, I don't want to try anymore, and sort of becomes this divide between the leader and the team because they take it personally. They think, well, they don't like me and I must not be a very good leader, and they're just so ungrateful. And what do you say to those leaders that are in those? I mean, it happens all the time, right? Where people,
I think one of the things that this goes back to is we have to understand how change happens.
Yeah.
And, I can have bad habits that don't really work well for me, but darn it, I know how to do them because I've been doing them for a long time, right? So change is hard, and it means that it's a guarantee that they'll be pushed back even when it's positive.
Yeah.
If you haven't done the work of socializing it, of building those connections with your people, of getting their input, then it becomes, we're starting to look like that old style of leadership, that old hierarchical model. Here's what I've decided we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just the same way that Pam and I colluded that she was going to live forever, we have colluded with leaders that all you need to know is the technical stuff of how to do it, and everybody's going to follow. You share the right idea, the smart idea, whatever it is, give the smart speech, and people are going to rally behind you. It just doesn't work that way, actually. We're just missing part of the toolkit. And so to those leaders, I would say, we can work on that. We can develop that area.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be that way, but it is a toolkit that requires investment and time and energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes time and investment with your team. In isolation. Yeah. So this next question, I hope that you'll have an answer. It's kind of an out there question, but it relates back to our question about coaching to make a better world. So we all know the impact of story on learning. And so I'm hoping that you will share a story with us and our listeners. You've coached leaders across industries and from around the globe over a long period of time. If you could share a story of a peak moment that you have had with a client, protecting confidentiality, of course, to illustrate the impact that coaching had on making a better world, a time when you thought this is really going to make a difference in the world, and how coaching played a role in that.
Well, I'll make a couple of comments. I think that making a difference in the world happens one small step at a time, one small interaction at a time. That's all any of us can do. And while I don't have a specific case, what I would say is that in those cases where we have together, coach with client, uncovered something that has been out of the client's awareness and that allows them to show up differently in ways that matter to them, their team, and their organization. Those are peak moments. But the interesting thing is, it's not necessarily a peak moment, but a series of small peak moments that eventually culminate in a shift that has some lasting qualities to it. And I say that because I think in coaching, there's always this wish that a great coach can create, one of these peak moments and everything changes. No, it just doesn't happen that way. We human beings change slowly, and we see things slowly, and we uncover things slowly. Coaching moves at a slower pace than the old teaching technical skills, and then it goes fast. So it is a dance that requires real commitment from the client. What they're working has to really matter for them to hang in there. Yeah. And then it requires a really skilled coach.
Yeah.
Over to you, Michael.
Pam can get a aha in like 5 minutes. So.
That's true.
I've seen that. I've seen that in training.
Yes.
Just own it, Pam. Yeah, so I'll follow the rules and I'll share a couple stories. So one is actually about myself as a client. So I first experienced coaching. I grew up in a coaching family, right? But didn't really, when you're young, the time for technical skills is when you're young, right? When you actually don't know what to do. And so when I was young growing up, I thought, how are they running this organization that is not really telling people any answers? It seems kind of tricky to me. I didn't understand it as a young person. I moved to Kenya, found myself a leader in what was eventually a pretty large organization over there, and I received a Hudson partner with that organization, as I think you both know, and I received coaching as part of that. And I was probably 25 or something, and overseeing a large team. I knew technically what to do, hopefully. I think I was decent at that. I had no idea what I was doing as a leader, right? Just had not explored that world. And the same was true for most of the organization. I think probably there was only one person in the whole organization, 7,000 people, only one person who was over 30. We were young, right?
Yeah.
And everything that comes along with that. A lot of energy, a lot of confidence. And for me, coaching really shifted how I thought about myself as a leader. It shifted the way that I thought of curiosity. Really being curious and really leveraging people's talents. It's not that I was trying not to do that before, but coaching it helped me develop some skills that I could use that sort of cascaded through my work there. And then I would say for me, it actually was the experience that inspired me to eventually work at Hudson. Mm-hmm. It was the spark that led me here as well. And for that organization, Hudson coached their top 30 leaders for 5 years each year and trained all of the managers in that organization. And it really shifted the culture in that organization from some, we were a group of smart-ass young people who had a lot of energy. And it helped us mature as a leadership group, as an organization, and made us stronger for it. So anyway, that's one with me as a client that really had an impact on my life path in a big way. And then I think the other story that I would share is, so I do a lot of coaching in East Africa and then in South Asia. Majority of my clients are in those places. And, I had a client who I really loved. I'm so lucky I work with clients who are just doing really interesting work, really smart people. This client, as we were rounding out the engagement, he reported back to me. He said, "Michael, I think it's mission accomplished. We did it." And we were helping him on his leadership skills. And he felt really good about it. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, he's a little too sure. Makes me nervous how sure he is that we're done. And so I felt a little nervous, but happy that he was satisfied. And I did see a lot of progress. And then about a year, maybe 2 years later, he came back and he said, "Hey, I want to know if you'll work with me to evaluate, if this work makes sense for me. If there's something else out there, I want you to help. I want you to work with me to help me think about how my values fit with how I'm spending all of my time." And so the reason I share this is I was so inspired by the fact that he thought that it was mission accomplished, the job was finished, but clearly it kept percolating for him, which for me is coaching. It's not just the engagement, right?
Yeah, right.
We set some things in motion and they're percolating if we're lucky. And for him it was. And he had developed the maturity to go from, I just need to nail down a couple of leadership skills, to I'm a work in progress, maybe forever, and that's a gift. That was huge for me. Yeah. So I was, I think it was his work more than mine, but coaching is a unique medium to help somebody get there and to see those things. So yeah, really inspiring.
I would think that would be an inspiring moment, because that's what you hope, when somebody says they don't need any more coaching and you're not quite sure. And I think that happens a lot. At least in my world, it kind of does. I see people who are just, they jump off the diving board thinking, I've got it, and then they look and see, well, there's not very much water in that pool, and they come back once they realize that maybe they might need a little bit more. The unpacking afterwards, to me, seems to go a lot better. How did that work for you when this person came back? How did that change the relationship?
It's nice.
Or the coaching, pardon me.
There's something it's a wonderful thing to have a lot of history with somebody. And so, to see how somebody has grown and developed over time, you can develop a sort of shorthand. And so I think it just gave us an easy way in, and a direct path to get to the heart of the matter. It doesn't make the work easier, right? Still complex and confusing, and all of those things that coaching always will be. But I would say we have a relationship that is solid, that allows us to go a lot of different places, which can make it a lot more fun.
Yeah. I think one thing that this brought up for me too is when working with clients, that, like you're saying, they oftentimes come saying, I have a couple things I want to work on, that's leadership skills, and outcomes oftentimes also impact them personally, right? Because it starts with that inner work, which translates to their families and their community. And for me, that when we think about that better world, and Pam, you sort of brought that up to say it starts with these small shifts over time, and it starts with that inner work. That yes, it changes us as leaders, but it changes us as people, and that translates into supporting and helping and making a better world that way too. Yeah, love that.
That's why the ROI calculation will never be fully satisfying, right?
Right. Yeah.
We do need some measurement, some way to know if we did what we set out to do. We need that stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not ROI, maybe it's something different. But no matter what we do, there's going to be a ton of important impact that won't be captured in that measurement. And so, do with that what you will.
Yeah.
So you're both thought leaders in leadership and coaching world. And we know that segment of our listening audience are coaches. We do have quite a few coaches that listen to us. And so what do you see on the horizon that you think would expand coaches' impact and the coachee's experience?
Got some thoughts.
You go ahead.
One of the things that I have been thinking a lot about, it's actually that Pam referenced it earlier, this idea of not knowing. There's this concept first developed by John Keats, negative capability, which is a term to describe the capacity to sit with not knowing, to coexist with the anxiety of not knowing. You think about it, like when you're in a coaching conversation or a work situation where nobody knows exactly what is going to happen or what's going to emerge, it's tense and it's uncomfortable, right? And I think that this is one of the things that coaches, it's one of the unique gifts that we have, that we enter into these conversations and we hold that with our clients. We hold that tension. And I think that it's really hard to do. It's especially hard right now when we meet with these clients and they're like, I need answers yesterday. There's no time for this. We gotta go snappy. Instead of a 1-year engagement, I got 3 sessions and I need to see incredible results at the end of it. And so, sitting with not knowing, are you kidding me? We don't have time for that. And yet the paradox is that's where the development happens, right? And holding that tension. And so for me, where we're headed, I think, the world is headed in the direction of this uncertainty and increasing pace. We need everything quicker. We need bite-sized everything. And coaches have this incredible gift that becomes more important in the context of that changing world, which is slowing it down and holding that tension. And so I think that's something that we can lean into as coaches. We can double down on that and to think about how do we deepen our capacity for that, because the contrast is getting turned up and up and up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of top of mind for me.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I want to just add to that and connect a dot back to Keats as well. You know, I think the wish to know what I should do in this situation, this wish to move at the speed of light, this wish to know everything, that what we miss underneath it all is what matters to you. What is your sense of purpose in this life? And I had this kind of accidental opportunity to sit in the apartment where Keats died at age 25 in Rome, not too long ago. And
You were there not too long ago. He died a long time ago.
he died a long time ago. But here's the thing. When he died at age 25, unknown to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And right up until his last days of life, he was writing because he knew that's what mattered to him. That's what his sense of purpose was. And on his tombstone, because he knew nothing, he didn't know if any of his work would ever be recognized, he asked that these words be written. And there, here lies one whose name was writ in water, whose name was writ in water. And yet, even while he experienced that his name was writ in water and would come and go, he still stayed connected to what mattered most to him. And I think that is what is often missing for us human beings these days. Yeah.
So I'm called to ask you this question, Pam. What would you say is your purpose?
Well, my purpose in this life has always been to make a difference. Always has been, and that has centered on specific things. And I have consistently dedicated time and energy to those things that really are priorities for me. Yeah. Making the world a better place, we're living in times where a lot of people have lost a sense of hope.
Yes.
And there's this phrase that Angelus Davis has that I remind myself of regularly. Hope is a discipline. It's a discipline. It's easy to be a cynic in these times, but hope is a discipline. And so finding that rudder for each of us in all the small acts, I think that's critical, essential.
Yeah. Michael, how about you? What is your purpose?
Well, I was raised by people who talked a lot about purpose. I was sort of given this great instruction as a young person: go off and just do what you're passionate about. It really was given those instructions, and ended up in all sorts of interesting situations as a result of that. And I think that part of my purpose is to use whatever talents I have to make a positive impact on the world. I think that has sort of been my rudder. Everywhere I've ended up, every job I've had throughout my life has been based on that curiosity. Maybe this is how I could make a bigger impact in the world. Maybe, and it's not. It's partially from a sense of service, but I think it's also, why not? Why would we not be working to do that, to make the world better for everybody? There's this runner. I'm a runner. You know that.
Yes.
There's a runner.
Not just a runner. You are a, what do they call it?
They call me a crazed runner.
No. Yeah, I know.
Well, now we know.
But
Most of my loved ones.
The marathon. That's not a marathon runner. It's the extreme. What is
the ultra stuff?
Ultra. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. But there's a famous runner from a while back. He died around the same age as Keats, actually. And he had something he said, which is, to do anything less than your best is to waste the gift. And I think that's like, I have that in me, like some sort of a commitment to working really hard for the things that I care about. And I don't know exactly why I have that, but that's what I have. And it's such a privilege to be in a role like where I am, to have all of these resources and all of these models and incredible ideas where we can actually do that. We can reach out into the world and we can help people. We can make an impact on their lives, shift things for people in ways that really mean a lot. So, it's my wiring.
Yeah. And oh my gosh. So something you said, Michael, where you said you grew up having the statement or being told, follow your passion.
Right.
And I think what is so incredible is where it led you is back home.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I tried to get really far away. And I got
so
as far away as I
poetic.
could. And then I just found myself, I live less than a mile. I'm raising my 2 kids less than a mile from the house that I grew up in.
Yeah.
We drive by it sometimes just for fun.
I love that.
It really is fascinating how it happened. And it's a great lesson that, you could plan all you want, but you don't know how things are going to play out. It sort of makes sense when you describe it, from here looking back.
But it's the lesson. It's the lesson. It's the parenting lesson that I'm seeing. And for those who are just listening to the audio, we're watching Pam with this huge grin on her face, right? She has her son close to her. And she, as a parent, said, go, follow your passion. And you didn't hold tight. And in the end, I mean, it makes me want to cry.
Full circle.
Yeah, that you are back. In the letting go, you return. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You're going to make 2 podcasters cry here in a moment. That's beautiful. Oh, so interesting that you brought up hope, Pam, because I'm getting ready to ask both of you some hope questions. It's something that we do with each of our interviewees, our guests. I think you're aware that we've been conducting research on the topic of hope, and if you aren't, we're conducting research on the topic of hope with the intention to write. We would like to publish on that. So one of the ways that we've been collecting data is to have people who are not on our podcast go on our website and do the 4-question survey that we have. But I find it just so much more impactful to ask the questions of the people live. So I am going to ask one question at a time. There are only 4 questions. And I think if we could get each of you to give your answer to each one in that way, we'll move through it. Okay. So here we go. First question. And we'll start with Pam. Where do you see signs of hope in the world today?
Well, I see signs among many groups of women who are reaching out to one another, and at a time when we need that so much. And I think that it can be in the smallest ways that's how it starts. So I see that in my community. I see it in our Hudson community, and I see evidence of it at a larger scale.
I'm a huge optimist, and I see a lot of progress that the world has made and is making. So, my time living internationally, I spent a lot of that time working in the space of food security, addressing food insecurity. So people who are farmers, but yet we're not growing enough food to even feed their family over the course of the year. And, the number of people living in extreme poverty has dramatically reduced over the past 50 years. We've made huge progress on that. Infant mortality rates have improved dramatically. The number of people dying from curable diseases dramatically reduced. So these are like really big things. If we think about what really matters in life, making sure people have enough food, making sure people have enough money to buy the basic stuff. Kids are making it to adulthood. These are very simple, but most of the world has not had the luxury to check those boxes, and we're getting a lot closer. So I don't know. There's the other side to it, things that worry me, but I think on the hope side, yeah, that we can do good if we put effort to it. We can do more than we think.
True. All right, Pam, how do you sustain hope for yourself?
Well, I am a fairly hopeful human being, so I think I come by it naturally, and I definitely I focus on where I can make a difference, what I'm grateful for. I see it as a responsibility. I just, in these times, even in this country, I'm not going to do there's nothing for me. There's something for all of us to do at all times. If we're awake and alert, there are places where we can take actions that create hope, and that's important.
Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could take credit for sustaining hope. I think I just am kind of optimistic. I just have a tendency to think that, things can be better, and if we want them to be, then we can make them better. I think that there's something about like believing in the goodness of people. Most people are good, and most people are trying their best with what they know right now and the opportunities they've had so far in life. We're all kind of trying our best to leverage that. It's not like I'm a saint. I don't always have that ability to see it that way, but I do in my heart believe that people are generally really good. And so I think if you could believe that, then there's a lot of reason to hope. There's so much potential. There's so many things we haven't tried yet.
I do think that what we're talking about now weaves together several things we've already been talking about. So it is that how do we sustain that growth mindset? How do we get comfortable with not knowing? How do we practice wondering more and listening more? And so I think all those things are interconnected relative to hope.
That might lean into the next question too, Pam, and that's how do you engage or inspire others to be hopeful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, modeling the way, sharing what I'm hopeful about, reaching out, extending a hand to people in small ways and in bigger ways, I have to say that Michael has and his wife have 2 children. I have another son with a child. That there's something about small ones in the world that create a lot of hope, and so I hope to play a role in making this world a good place for them to reside and grow up in.
How about you, Michael? Thank you, Pam.
I think my answer probably links to modeling the way, which is joining up with other people and contributing in some way, right? So I think joining up with Pam in Hudson is this opportunity to evolve something really great forward into the future, and I think when you do that, when you take risks together, and you see that on the other side of that doesn't always work, but it can work, and sometimes it does. That, for me, is what it's all about. That we can stand on, and we can find confidence that we should keep doing that. We should keep taking smart risks together and be willing to do that in the name of something that matters to us. So, but I don't think that happens alone. I think we have to join together with people and do that together.
Yeah. So, both of you, one at a time, if you could come up with one word that represents hope for you, what would that word be and why?
Well, this is going to sound maybe a little out there, but it's the word love. I think the world needs more love and loving kindness. I think that that's the ingredient that we sometimes all too often overlook.
Well, I'll just act as a counterpoint to love, which I agree with that, but I think we also need hustle. And so, because hope is not a
Yeah.
passive thing, right? If it's a discipline, we need to be waking up and hustling and willing to sweat and fight for the things that really matter.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think if we got love and hustle, we should be in good shape.
I like that.
I do too. Like the pair
It's
there.
got some energy behind it.
All right. Thank you for being a part of our hope research.
Yes.
So we're coming close to the end of our interview here, and I have one off-script question.
You had to know.
It's coming. So in the U.S., we've just celebrated Thanksgiving when this drops. What are you thankful for in each other?
Mm.
Well, I never would have known my mom the way that I do if I hadn't worked at Hudson, right? She would have been my mom, and she was an awesome mom. So it would have been plenty. But there's this whole other side to her, right? That everybody on this call knows, right? She's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so, what was your question? Because I'm just talking about things I like about her.
What are you thankful for in each other? So what are you thankful
I'm super
for?
thankful for this. Yeah.
You're
I see
getting
where
there
I'm
for
headed.
Pam. Yeah.
So I wouldn't have seen it, but what I'm really thankful for, like she's become one of my most important mentors in my life. Not like mother-son, like, two people working in the world, thinking about things, being curious, challenging one another. And so I'm super thankful to have had the opportunity to learn from her in the way that I have. And, just as we were talking about before, I could have just stayed over somewhere else and not ended up here and missed that opportunity. So, yeah, it means a lot to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say this business of a family business is a complicated thing. There's a lot of books have been written about how difficult this is to move from kind of one generation to another. And I love the way we dance together. And I think we're both willing to take risks, to blow things up a little bit and look at things from angles that are new to both of us. I have a lot of gratitude for the dance. And just as Michael said, a mother knows her children as her children, but we have a dual relationship that is such a gift, such a big gift. So
It's so obvious. I don't know if you know that, but those of us in the community, or what I call it the Hudson family, we see that. And I think that's such a strong message, and it's such a strong reference point for us when we're looking for that kind of strength. Sometimes we see that in you, and we see the connection that so many people don't have that opportunity. And I think it's wonderful that you do, and I think it's wonderful that you embrace it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. We have
So
one
last question. Looking forward, what are you really excited about? And can be anything you want to share. What's next for you?
one thing I'm excited about is it kind of extends beyond coaching. It is this work that we are spending more time in around whatever we want to call life in the 70s and 80s, but
There's not a good way to call it. Anytime I've ever tried to
no,
use
we can't. We're not
something-
calling it retirement. We're not calling it third
I
stage.
see.
Get in trouble.
We just did a week-long session along with MEA and called it the bonus round, because we are all living probably 20 years longer than our parents, certainly our grandparents did. Very interested in this segment, the stage in life as a super vital stage where we're no longer, one day we're not working anymore. If our work is meaningful, that's not how it's going to roll out for most of us. And life is more than a golf course and a retirement account.
Yeah.
So it takes a whole lot of purpose, a sense of meaning, a connection connectedness, all of those things. And so I have a lot of energy for that.
Love that.
Yeah, there's so many things that I'm excited about. There are so many opportunities to evolve this work, and so much need. I think the thing that I would say, we somehow haven't really talked about technology on this whole call, which I think is great
Wow.
because it gets time.
Plenty of time right now. Yeah, AI is everywhere.
Yeah, but what I will say is I'm really optimistic about the opportunities to leverage technology in combination with coaching. And the thing that I'm really obsessed with right now is doing it in a way where we don't sacrifice quality. The tech-enabled coaching service doesn't need to be worse. We don't need to lose the developmental magic of coaching as we make it available to more people. And so this is something that we're really working hard on, and I'm committed to, is figuring out ways to, yes, make it available to more people. We need to do this. This is a priority. I think it should be a priority for the field. And yet, let's not water it down as we do that. Let's be stubborn about what we've always been stubborn about, that quality matters, and coaching can be developmental for everybody who experiences it. And so, to some extent, I feel like we all need to be protecting that as the field grows and evolves, and we see coaching taking on new forms. We still need to protect what's important about coaching specifically as a medium, while also trying new things and throwing stuff out there and seeing what works.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm fascinated by that, actually. I don't understand it as much as I want to. I'm just kind of diving in now, and I think I'm finding it a little confusing sometimes to find a right resource. To where would I find a reliable resource? And there's so much out there. It's kind of like, okay, I could go the YouTube method and look at 40 different YouTube messages that are 3 minutes long, but I'm looking for something reliable. So hopefully we're going to see some of that emerge soon.
Yeah. Absolutely. I will keep talking about what we know. The challenge is it's changing quickly, right? So something true today is going to look a little different in a few months, and that's the pace that we're moving at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I know our listeners have benefited from this greatly.
This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so nice to spend the time with you.
Yeah. Happy holidays.
Likewise.
We will see you next year
Yes.
at the conference.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Take good care. Oh my gosh. Can you believe such richness in 2 episodes? How lucky.
That was so much fun. Such a amazing mother-son professionals duo. And I'm going to be thinking on this one for a while. I think this one is definitely going to be a listen twice.
Oh, for sure. This one hit my heart. And I will say that, Pam was our very first interview.
Yeah.
When we started our podcast. And it was just so lovely seeing her now as we're in our 4th season, right?
Yeah.
And Michael, we've interviewed Michael before for a different podcast, actually, but it was just lovely having him here and seeing how he's thriving in this new world he's in, right?
Yeah.
Just lovely. So let's keep that conversation going. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have so many exceptional podcast episodes coming up, more with fantastic guests like Pam and Michael. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast at Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them. Text them, email them, or take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds and follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because you never miss an episode. To follow us, go to Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you'll be willing to give us a 5-star rating and a review and share the episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful. Thank you, Crystal, for bringing Michael and Pam back to us. This is
fabulous.
Wonderful. Many thanks to you, our listeners. We do appreciate you. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Have a great week.